Broadcasting live from the Treehouse in Phoenix, Arizona.
It's Not Conscious
With Mark Poles and
Chris Woodsy Peralta.
From the home offices in Gilbert, Arizona.
Welcome, sir.
Sir, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Bienvenidos.
Happy Christmas, Merry Boxing Day, all that good stuff.
Oh, yes.
Today is the 27th?
Of the Boxing Days. It is the 27th
December.
December
27th, 2020.
Yes.
COVID going nasty. Tears in UK. Tears and tears. Tier 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh,
and
tears. I was like, wah.
Exactly.
Oh, those tears. Tears.
2 tiers.
And tears.
And allegedly those numbers are ramping up, sir. But
okay.
we're between obviously
we're
Boxing
twixt the
Day.
hedges.
We are twixt the hedges. Twixt Christmas and New Year's. This one is a Not Conscious.
Yes, it is.
So this one's serious.
Surreal.
What's it about, sir? What's the title of this one?
Eugenics.
And Megenics. All of our
All
genics.
the genics.
Yes.
It's funny. It's eugenics, but there's an E at the front.
Yeah.
It's like Philadelphia.
It is, but
Or
it's kind of like the
pterodactyl.
European Union genics.
Yes.
The Eugenics.
Eugenics.
Yeah, which is interesting.
It totally is.
The case.
This was a documentary that I came across on PBS like a year ago, and I found it really interesting, and I had no idea about it, and then I put it on the list of things that we might talk about, and then we both rewatched it, and we psycho checkmark took 5 pages of notes or something ridiculous like that, and we're going to discuss the pros and cons of eugenics and what it is and how it became a global phenomenon, so to speak.
Yeah, rise and fall of. And because it was even more like eugenics was interesting back then because they didn't have the technology we have now. Now it's even, eugenics is even a different conversation than it was then.
Well, it's scarier now.
Yeah, because back then it was just sterilization, right? So we'll talk about all that. But it was basically,
in a way, yeah.
Basically, we think you're good. Don't breed with that guy who's bad, but you don't know what comes across. Now with CRISPR and all that stuff, we'll definitely get into that.
So I looked it up because I'm like halfway through the documentary, which is less than 2 hours on PBS. It's free. Well, first of all, it's called The American Experience is the name of the show on PBS, and then Eugenics Crusade is the name of the episode.
Season 30, I believe it's episode 11.
That is correct, sir.
I think that's what it was.
About halfway through, I thought, okay, what exactly does eugenics mean? What's the definition in English? Because they did tell what's the definition in Greek, I think, which we'll get to that. But are you okay if I read the definition
Absolutely.
in English?
That's a great start.
The science of improving a human population by controlled breeding to increase the occurrence of desirable, heritable characteristics. Developed largely by Francis Galton, who we will talk about, as a method of improving the human race.
Yes.
The science of improving a human population by controlled breeding.
Yep. I think it's expanded, though. I really do believe that's expanded because now it's genetic manipulation in vitro and all that, where they didn't have that as, in the 30s.
What does in vitro have to do with eugenics?
Well, it's about picking out, you can pick the egg that doesn't have, remember remember our podcast about the first cousin marriages?
Yeah.
They can do a blood test ahead of time to see if things cross over. And there are in vitro, you can remove certain cancers in the embryonic stage before you even do the implanting of the fertilization of the egg.
Okay, I forgot all about that part of that. Yeah,
with DNA splicing and everything like that. Now,
right.
We talked about CRISPR with the Chinese twins.
Yes.
Right? So that'll come up, but
okay,
I feel like eugenics is all of that.
So what is CRISPR?
Well, CRISPR, we'll get into CRISPR later.
You can't throw the goddamn term around.
Okay, bro.
And then somebody, because I don't.
CRISPR is a gene editing tool, splicing, used by biochemists and whatnot to remove and add DNA to current, strands of DNA.
And I think I asked you this question a while ago. Is that what that movie Gattaca's about?
Yeah, we talked about Gattaca, and I think we were going to talk about that later as well with that CRISPR thing. The whole thing, we'll get into exactly what all that is. I can give you a quick simplified definition, but basically the thing is eugenics just, it's about birth now, but now it's beyond because we can do it outside the body, right? I mean, we can do some things outside the body that weren't just you can't have kids or can have kids, right? Because that's how it started.
So are you talking about like body modification?
Well, no, I was just talking about
like outside of the body.
Well, I'm saying because of in vitro fertilization, you can take an egg.
Oh, okay.
And manipulate it and then put it into something. It's not just done randomly, because even though you have good stocks per se, and we'll talk about how they got like the good breeding and whatnot, even with good breeding, you still have irregularities because it's not 100%, right? It's just a lower percentage of, or a higher percentage of, but depending on what, intelligence, looks, all of those personality types and traits, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, CRISPR design tool. It's a gene knockout design tool. Oh, that sounds great. Oh, yeah. It simplifies gRNA design. Ooh. You can design RNAs to guide gene.
What about like Wranglers and Levi's and those?
Well, those are delicious. And they look great. The 501s, the buttonfly, only the buttonfly. So I apologize. I've tangented already way too much. Let's get back to eugenics.
Okay.
Specifically what it was about. Okay. How did the documentary start?
Well, first of all, I like to set the timeline because I'm psycho. So
it starts with the end.
Well, okay. Eugenics basically started in 1902 and ran through the 1930s, through the Depression. So everyone has an idea of the timeline of when it transpired and when it became popular culture. And I had no idea that it was even a thing in America, and a big thing in America. But to your point, the show started in 1934 in San Francisco, where what do you want to call her?
She was an elitist. She was a well-to-do. She was the great-granddaughter of the guy who invented the first steam locomotive, the Tom Thumb. So her name was Ann Cooper Hewitt.
Yes.
And she was a great-grandson of Peter Hewitt or something like that. And anyway, he basically, they were well-to-do. They were well off.
And so she wasn't like a movie star, but she was
just rich.
Right, but she was born into wealth.
Correct.
She was a young lady in her 30s, right?
Yeah.
No kids, never married.
At this time, no. Yeah.
At that point.
Correct.
And her mom, she went into the hospital for an appendicitis, right?
Appendectomy. Uh-huh.
She came out of the hospital and later learned that she had been made sterile.
Yeah, a section of her fallopian tubes were removed, allegedly. And that was August 18th, 1934.
1934. There you go. So in basically the middle of the Depression in Frisco.
She was deemed, or she was called the sterilized heiress. And then she sued her mother and the surgeons for $500,000 in 1936. Which I read something equivalent to like $9 million.
That's a boatload of money, dude.
But that might have been 10 years ago article, so it might be even more than that. But $500,000 in 1936?
That's a lot, yeah.
Holy mackerel, that is a crap ton. And basically she sued her mother and the two surgeons who were in the operation, who performed the operation.
So why did her mother want her to be sterilized?
Well, that's where it gets a little gray.
What were her mother's motives?
Right. She claims she did what she did for society's sake. She claimed that her daughter was what's called feeble-minded, which what we probably call some kind of mental challenges nowadays. Feeble-minded is a lower IQ or lower intelligence, I guess. They didn't really have IQ at the time. So lower intelligence. And they, so she claimed that her daughter was feeble-minded and that what she did was for society's sake, so she couldn't bring a lesser human into this world. And it was legal because the state at the time had a law allowing for sterilization for feeble-mindedness.
Which is terrifying.
Scary. And we'll get into how that all happened. And once again, isn't it always like the initial idea of a better society is always a great start? But then who deems what's better?
Right.
And I mean, there's so many questions that come up, and these will come up as we talk about this.
And there was a lot of, they interviewed a lot of doctors and historians and writers and people that appeared smart And they said, yeah, it's a great idea, but the underbelly of it is fear and hate, and the fact that the elites were the ones who were deciding what was acceptable. So that's a problem. Well, from my perception, that's a problem.
Well, then, and this is the controversy on this particular person. It'll come full circle. Do we want to talk about it at the end, or do we want to just bang out the whole story and then talk about the middle part where it basically...
Yeah, let's just finish. I'm of the opinion that we just finished the story.
Yeah, so let's finish this. So basically, what happened was there was a thought, though, that in the gentleman's will, her father's will, the wife's or the mother's husband, without children, she does not get the fortune. And Cooper Hewitt would not get the fortune of the family if she did not have children.
Right. So it would go to the mom. It would
then go to the mother.
So that was the mom's motive.
So they're not certain, right? Because she, to that time, claimed that it was because of her daughter's feeble-mindedness, and that it was legal that you could sterilize feeble-minded people at the time in 1934 when it happened. However, it would make sense to me that if I knew the will, I was greedy and I was a human just like everyone else, I'd probably do the same thing. Like, it's legal, just say that she's feeble-minded and all that. So what did you find interesting about how they determined her to be feeble-minded? Do you remember that?
What I do recall was that the defense for the doctors said that she would be a bad mom. That's it.
Right.
Did I miss something?
Well, remember they administered like an intelligence test?
Oh, yes.
Like 20 minutes before they actually put her in the thing.
Yes.
So it just seemed like dumped on her. And she's like, why are you asking me these questions?
Right. They asked her very challenging questions like, what river dumps into Lake blah, 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 blah in the middle of nowhere that no one's ever heard of?
Or what's the longest river in the United States? While she's
in excruciating pain waiting to have her appendix removed.
Right.
So that's pretty messed up. That no one knows the answer to that question. Not even the smartest dude on Jeopardy knows that shit. So yes, okay, now I do remember that.
Yeah. So I think that was the setup, right? That's how they determined her feeble-mindedness was through this weird intelligence. But go ahead. Yeah.
She was fluent in 3 languages.
Yes.
So how can you be labeled as... Well, feeble-minded was one of several terms they used for lesser intelligence. How can you be labeled as lesser intelligence if you've mastered 3 languages?
Yeah.
That seems ridiculous.
It was pretty crazy. So anyway, that's what that was all about, right? So that's the whole story about this one woman who was sterilized. So the question is, was it really because this feeble-mindedness that they claim? To me, to your point, if I were to put money on it, if I were to put a bet on it, I would bet that she was doing it so that she could have the fortune of her husband after he passes.
Yeah, it's sad, but I would agree that is correct.
She used
the law
in her favor as a not a loophole, because it was clearly written.
No, not a loophole at all. I mean, that is that. And then the judge, after 6 days, threw the case out of court because the law states that you can sterilize somebody.
Right. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they're just like, the law is the law.
And that wasn't that long ago. 1934 is less than 100 years ago. That's not in the time span of humanity. That's not that long ago.
We have full vehicles that are on production assembly lines at that point already.
Yeah.
We've got airplanes. We've got airplanes.
Yes.
We've got basically we've modernized it more now. We had reciprocal engines back then, but back then we have everything almost now other than social media, internet, possibly.
Well, we didn't have computers, but we had phones.
Right. We didn't have computers in the traditional sense, but we had telephones.
Yeah.
We had telegraphs. We had flight. We had mass transit at least
trains for sure.
Well, trains, but also cars as well. Right. Steam engine. Right.
Yeah,
everything was big. So we're industrialized at that point.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, this is in the middle of the Depression.
Right at the Depression there. So and so eugenics was here about controlling human reproduction, right? It was a scientific solution for social problems. It was like a combination of hope on one side and fear and hate on the other. You actually mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all that?
I think that's absolutely correct. That the idea that, hey, the original idea was to, if the original gentleman's idea, Francis Galton, is that correct?
Yes, Galton, I think is how they said, but same thing, Galton.
Out of Long Island, New York, his original idea was, if we can have somehow determine the hereditary traits of people, and if those traits are bad, alcoholism, criminality, negative things, and those people don't procreate, but the people that are stronger and smarter, they do procreate, we can create a better society. Well, is that a good idea or not? It doesn't seem bad.
All right.
I don't know.
That's the thing, is a concept, better humans, like they said, better babies was one of the big statements.
Right.
Like making better babies. Like, who doesn't want better babies?
Right.
Who doesn't want
healthier.
Right. Who doesn't want a healthier society?
Yeah.
Right. And so those are the things. We'll get into the philosophies of that, and that's where where the contradictions come in, right?
Yes.
But one of the things I found early on that they talked about, it didn't start with Nazi Germany. Whenever you hear eugenics, a lot of people tied it to Nazi Germany. That was very interesting because Hitler had the Aryan nation, right? Remember the blonde hair, blue eyes.
But I never.
But you didn't even know about it.
I mean, I obviously knew the Aryan race and Hitler's obvious attempt to make a master race. And, that the term master race was coined by Hitler, right? But I didn't know that's what eugenics was. Right. I had no idea. I never heard the term eugenics until I watched that 2-hour special. You know what I mean? That's so, but you're right. If you had heard eugenics, many people did tie it to Nazi Germany.
Yeah, because it was a whole mass racing. You didn't think anything about the Americans doing anything of the sort.
Not at all.
Nothing of the sort.
No.
Right? But it wasn't even a fringe idea in the 30s and mid-30s. It had already taken, to your point, 1902 is when it started. 1910 is when it really took off.
Right.
With Davenport and those other guys, right? So it was a utopian idea, making better people. Like that was the whole thing. It was about having healthy children, stronger society, The thing is, some pretty horrific things were done in that name, right? In the name of eugenics. It's funny because they talk about it later as it being like a religion, right?
Yeah. And one guy felt like, what's his name? The second in command guy thought he was
Laughlin guy, Harry
Laughlin. Yes, correct. He was like an evangelist.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah, he's selling his idea.
Right.
Yeah, the idea should kind of sell itself. So to your point, fall 1902, Charles Benedict Davenport, he's 36, Harvard, meeting with Sir Francis Galton, and he was in his 80s at the time, in England, I believe he went on a trip.
Right.
And his motto, this Galton guy's motto, whenever you can, count. I think that's pretty smart.
He was a numbers guy.
Yeah, it was just... And he was about stats, right? It could all be written down and created at that point. He created weather maps, fingerprinting for finding people. That was pretty cool. I thought that was an interesting thing. About
the dude started
Francis
fingerprinting.
Galton. Yeah,
that's crazy
for criminality or to identify fingerprints, right? And then also he also had the parameters for the perfect cup of tea. A spot of tea, was it?
And that he was related to
Darwin.
Thank you.
Yes, he was the half cousin of Charles Darwin. So it did seem like these families of,
smart people.
They're generally white people at this point. They're all in Europe, so it's pretty much white people. But the better offs, the higher to-dos are all seem to be related in some weird way, right? This Galton guy was able to have his university and be super smart. And he happens to be the half cousin of Darwin. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Once again, it kind of goes in the family and how important family lineage was definitely at that point. It's still important nowadays, but really back then it just kind of set you for life, or didn't, in a weird way.
So you're saying that it gave those two guys the ability to do research and it set them up to...
Certainly afforded them better opportunities than some guy, that's a Thatcher's son.
William Thatcher.
Like a Thatcher's son, like in Knot's Tale. So created weather maps, and then Galton's theory, right, was talent or intelligence seem to run in certain families. If we get people with high quote unquote talent to mate with each other and prevent people with low talent from mating each other, in a few generations, we'd create a race of supermen. And that was kind of the thought was, okay, we get just on its face, on that alone. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm a terrible person, dude. I'm just gonna spit it out. Let's say that actually happens. Okay, in the utopian idea of that, let's say that actually does happen. That in 2 to 3 generations that actually occurs. No one is going to want to take the trash out. No one's going to want to pick strawberries, as my father threatened that I would do if I didn't study. And that's, everyone's going to be, oh, I'm smart, I don't have to do that shit. Well,
there's always someone on the hind tit of the teat, or the back teat. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
There has
but
to
if
be.
you create a race of super people, you're going to have everyone's super people, but the lower super people are the ones that are going to do those jobs. And I understand that's maybe a topic that we shouldn't discuss.
No, it needs to be discussed. For sure. So to your point, yeah, but even beyond that, like on its face though, if just that concept of don't have lessers breeding, it doesn't sound like a bad idea. And I feel like a horrible human being for saying that. I'd want to avoid that as much as possible, or at least breed maybe a lower talent with a higher talent, like, and even it out or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. But
once again, you'd have to deem what talent is.
Okay. So let me ask,
what smarts is and what intelligence is and all that.
Yes. So there was one lady who was shunned very much for her. I'm skipping ahead, but the question I think is apropos. She was a very large proponent of birth control, and she was shunned for the majority of her public career until she tied birth control to eugenics. Then it gained popularity. So one of her promotions was, don't have a child if you cannot financially handle it. The financial burden of having a child or children. Don't have a kid if you can't handle it financially.
Right.
What's your take on that statement?
In a utopian world, I would love that all humans would recognize whether they could afford financially and emotionally to have a child or two.
Right.
I would love for people to do that. The challenge is that in unfortunate circumstances, without proper early education or anything, you have younger people having children that aren't ready in the first place, but don't know they're not ready, for example. But it's already too late at that point, right? You're having the child now; it's already part of this society. It sounds awful when I say it, but I feel like self-regulation is good. We can't force people to not, right? In my opinion, though, if I were to have an opinion, which this may end the podcast completely, I feel that in this type of society, childbirth would be a privilege, not a right. Just like driving is a privilege and not a right. And I think we should be licensed to be parents. I know that sounds horrible.
Isn't being a parent a privilege? Isn't that part of
right? But it's not a right.
No,
we treat it like a right. So my thought was to make it licensed. Take a test. Go through. Everyone has to do this. This would be for betterment, in my opinion, because we at least have all the same foundational start of parenting. And then it goes astray by its own thing, but at least we all start at the same point. If we all had like a guideline, right? Like everyone, this is a really good way to raise your children. Obviously, people would say what's good and what's not. However, there's a general good way. It's like feed them when they're hungry, clean them when they soil themselves. You know, like the basic maintenance parts. You know what I mean?
Child maintenance.
Don't duct tape them and put them in a closet. That's probably a great idea.
That's what the nuns did, dude. That wasn't the parents.
Right. But you understand what I'm saying.
Of course I do.
So what are your thoughts on my ridiculous comment?
So basically, to summarize, Keanu Reeves summed it up very well with his statement in the movie Parenthood. You need to pass a test to get a driver's license, but any asshole can be a father. Ta-da!
Oh, I didn't even know he said that. See, that's exactly
where before he was Neo and before he was, super popular guy. He said that to Steve Martin, I think.
I love Steve Martin, speaking of. But, yeah, so, but what are your thoughts on that? Like, am I... Okay.
No, I agree with you.
Twitter
but
world.
the problem
am I
is,
a fucking evil human being?
The issue is that you and I are not parents. Yeah. And the issue is that you and I imagine, would be very, very good parents. Not that you and I are looking to adopt a child together, because that would be weird. So, because we're both responsible. You know what I mean? And we both think that, well, okay, I can't speak for you. I'm sorry.
You can speak for me.
No, I cannot.
I'll correct us.
I cannot. I think I would be a really good parent. Obviously it's not going to happen. I'm old and stuff. So, but the point is, I agree with you that we see neglect a lot, and that sucks. And sometimes that neglect is not intentional. A lot of the times because of alcoholism or drug abuse or a myriad of issues, right?
Some of the stronger kids come from neglect, though.
Well, of course.
Because they really learn to make their own mistakes. Like,
yeah.
Once again, my parents are great people, but they were they were involved in everything, and I could not make mistakes. And I didn't learn because I couldn't make mistakes. It wasn't until I was on my own and really screwed up and realized what debt was, or what, whatever was, because those are just personal things. But overall, my parents took on paper, took great care of me. Anyway, but you and I I'm also self-aware to know that I could break a child. I'm emotionally not healthy. Like, that's the truth. That's not,
no one is 100% emotionally healthy.
I understand that.
And obviously every person is damaged in some way, therefore every child is damaged.
But being aware of it.
Well, yeah.
We are, you and I think, are very self-aware of our shortcomings, whatever they may be.
Probably too much.
Right. Probably too much. And that's definitely part of the reason for me not wanting children. The whole thing is, I had a vasectomy at 34, man. That's how it was. It's just, it made sense to me, for me. I would not say that for anyone else. However, I think it is really callous to have a child and go in completely blind, especially super young and not knowing. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But go ahead.
No, that's all I have on that subject.
So
let's move along with eugenics.
All right, and we'll talk about birth control again with this woman.
Yes,
she comes up. So you have the term eugenics. What was the term that you got from Latin? Because that's where we're at now.
Latin, Greek, something like that. It was a combination of two words: well and born. Well-born eugenics, which I thought was interesting that they coined, or was it Davenport or
might have been Galton. I forget. It might have been. It might have been Davenport.
It doesn't matter. One of the two main guys.
Davenport or Galton, one of the two,
coined the phrase eugenics.
And then it became religious, like they were talking about it.
Well, in a way, yes.
And initially, Davenport opens up a thing. He works with plants and animals and crossbreeds.
When you say open up a thing, what does that mean?
An institute of some sort.
On the North Shore of Long Island.
Yes.
He opens up a 10-acre establishment.
Sure.
What do you want to call it?
Compound.
Sure. Yes.
Cult compound?
No, come on, man. It's not like that. It's not like Waco. They had birds and chickens and goats. No pterodactyls.
It was Timothy?
It was a pterodactyl-free environment, sir. Okay. There was one Chewbacca. He tended to the goats. He was a goat herder. Like
scruffy nerf herder is what he was.
Of course it was.
So this is where Gregor Mendel comes in.
Gregor Mendel.
Yeah, he's the guy who studied the heredity in peas.
Yes.
And that's where the whole thing was the Mendelian. Remember when they started talking about Mendelian stuff? It all tied back to him. And he found certain characteristics in peas.
Yes.
But once again, a pea isn't a human being. It's much more basic.
I'm pretty sure pee is not a human being.
That's what I've heard. Now, I've heard that human beings take them.
Peas?
Yeah.
And pea breaks.
Yes.
And we can be two peas in a pod.
We can. It would be like peas and carrots.
Like Bubba Johnson.
But they weren't, obviously, this is very new, right? They just realize all these new ways to study things. So the assumptions would be, a pea is a living thing, so humans living, so it's the same. Or, you wouldn't think of the complexity in some cases, right? So you'd think a lot simpler terms because it's brand new. These are brand new concepts that these people are.
So what was the law? What did he learn from the peas?
It was about the law of heredity.
Okay.
But basically he was finding that he could cross or, pollinate or whatever, make peas have certain traits and characteristics by combining them or something. That's my understanding of it.
What I remember was there was a drawing that there was the 3-in-1 rule, that it was every shit. How do I explain
it? Was a ratio of 3 to 1, but
right.
I didn't get very much into that because they didn't talk. They talked briefly about the 3 to 1 rule, and they had like a diagram up.
But the 3-in-1 rule was okay. If you have 4 peas, 3 were the same, 1 wasn't. And that was true with every generation down. So if they were breeding the peas, that was true with every generation below that as well. Then they found that to be true with chickens. They found that to be true with other animals besides peas. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so that was the law of heredity.
Yeah, the law of heredity was, like you said, it was the 3 to 1
rule, right?
ratio rule or whatever it was.
Something to that effect.
That stuff could be passed down into like a ratio of 3 to 1, right?
Yes.
So they had a 75% chance basically in getting
correct.
Or something
yes,
like that.
Thank you.
And they did, and then what Davenport took it to other plants and then added animals, to your point, with the chickens and all that.
Yeah.
Mendel only did the peas.
Yes, but they stole his idea from the peas,
right.
The 3-in-1. And
correct.
then
used that as a template for their studies.
Yes, correct.
And it really, So
they discovered that it was the same. I mean, it was true with other things besides peas.
Yes, and then they thought, it was once again a natural step from breeding animals to breeding humans. So then they were like, well, can we breed humans? It's like, well, no, because they take how long to develop, right? 20, 30 years.
How long for a time?
Right, it's generations, right? You can't study a full. How many generations can you really study?
3 or 4.
You need a much shorter kind of thing. But It did make sense, though, to go from thinking about the animals to thinking about doing it with humans, right?
Agreed.
So this guy creates some family history questionnaires, and he traces the pedigrees and looks for desirable traits in all of these questionnaires that he handed out, right?
And where did he send the questionnaires?
To a lot of well-born people, I thought.
I thought it was prisons.
Was that the prison one?
Pretty sure.
Yes.
It was prisons and also like,
right.
They didn't say insane asylums, but that seems like what it was.
Yes, it was at the prison. They were looking for it everywhere, not just on the high side. They were looking for the bad people too, because that's where the whole point of the next piece that we're going to talk about is about getting rid of the bad stuff.
Yes.
It's not even
undesirable traits.
Right. Not adding good. It's just removing, to your point, alcoholism, the criminality, and all these other negative societal issues, right?
Yes.
So they go, and a lot of these people were apprehensive about the influx of immigrants, right? Because this is a time when, these well-to-do people are leaving the front porch, and the streets of New York are littered with just immigrants everywhere, and they're poor and they're dirty and they're lesser because they're not.
Well, they've only been in America for a week, right?
Right.
And they probably don't know English.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they're trying to make a better life for themselves.
Because in the Northeast, Ellis Island is right there.
Yeah.
And they said 75,000 people a month were coming through Ellis Island. That is a lot of people. And think about those people. Are they going to stay in New York? Are they going to try to migrate to? They're going to go where the jobs are, right? How do they feed their families? That's where the people are going to be. that's it. That's survival, right?
Right. That's exactly what it was. But this is the thing is, America was great because of these people that made America great. Like,
yes,
we talk about the guy that comes in later, how he had relatives that signed the Declaration of Independence, and he came over on the fucking Mayflower, basically.
A pilgrim.
He was one of the Puritans, right? That came over.
Yes, exactly. Correct.
So we'll talk about that, of course, but the immigrant thing was a big issue. So they had this thing called the Progressive Movement. Do you have any notes on the Progressive Movement and what that was about?
Was that Mr. Grant, or is that later on?
Henry Goddard was the guy in this one. Okay, so they had a great belief in science, but they also had a belief in the government solving social problems. So it's really interesting because initially, right, the United States was founded on the lack of government, right?
Yes.
And here we are at this point, and they're saying the government should help solve social issues. So they wanted to stamp out alcoholism, quote unquote, bad people. And to your point, once again, you're right. Davenport studied all traits of humans, not just the high people, the highborn or whatever, the educated, the smart, but also the criminals and the alcoholics and the prisoners,
drug addicts.
Yeah. And the mental institutions.
Of course.
People, right.
Yeah.
So they started to zero in on low intelligence and called that feeble-mindedness. That's where feeble-mindedness came up. It just meant low intelligence.
That's where the term was first established. Is that correct?
That is correct. So then this Henry Goddard guy comes in, right? 42 years old, wanted to eliminate feeble-mindedness. And he created some kind of intelligence test. Do you want to take it from there?
Well, that wasn't. I was thinking about the test they did in the military. That wasn't the same test, was it?
Not the same test. Okay. This is the one where they had the 3 types of people.
Yeah, I knew that, but
do
do you remember the test that they took?
It was he just created an intelligence test. Okay. It was a very basic thing that he created.
Right. I do remember that they had 3 levels, and it's really sad because the levels that he created are now terms that we use every single day in a very derogatory way. The levels were moron, idiot, and imbecile. So I thought, that's messed up.
And it was crazy because idiot was the bottom, imbecile was the middle, and moron was actually the highest. There were 3 types of moron. Remember the high
there was different levels of moron.
Right. So moron was just subhuman is basically the way they looked at it.
From an intelligence perspective.
Right. The term moron, and it's actually it's still a scientific term. But we obviously have taken in the lexicon
moron.
You moron. Like, what's the Goldbergs? You moron. And what are we supposed to do, you moron? Like fucking Animal House.
Oh, yes.
So, idiot, imbecile, and moron were the 3 main types, right? And he studied 35 patients. He found a link between feeble-mindedness, due to defective ancestry.
That's his words.
That was his word.
Ancestry.
Defective ancestry. He found a link between feeble-mindedness and alcoholism, crime, etc. So then he became a strong believer in eugenics. And then we get into 1910. Do you have any notes on that one? If you have mine, you can use mine.
I'm just going to steal your notes, bro.
Yeah, take them, bro.
Mr. Davenport was convinced that certain human traits were passed down in a predictable way, and the American society can be improved dramatically if reproduction was controlled, which I find disturbing.
But then again, I just said that it should be licensed. So is that a type of control? I mean, I'm different than people. Please, everyone, don't hate me forever. I just feel this is a personal thing, but I'm not on a crusade to do this, right? I've chosen to not have children myself. So that's just how I feel about it. I'm allowed to have an opinion about it as long as, I don't feel like I'm doing anything wrong by having an opinion.
Yeah, of course not. But I mean, yeah.
But it's controlled, right? If it were licensed, it would be controlled in some way. Who licenses it?
That's my not fear. That's not the right word. But how would the human race? How would a government entity regulate that? Oh, I'm sorry. It's like a driver's test. Sorry, you couldn't parallel park. You fail. You only got 79%. No kids for you. You can retake it in a year if you study harder. Like it's an SAT. Come on. It's a PAT, a parental advisory test. That's great. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not a point after attempt. That's different. Totally different.
But wouldn't it be great to have something that everyone knew how to hold a baby the first time, or how to handle a baby, or how heavily responsible the responsibility of the baby, right? I mean, look, I've heard a story of a woman getting high at a party and putting her baby on top of her fucking car.
Oh, shut up.
On the roof of the car. It was in Phoenix. God. And she drives home and did a turn. The baby was safe. It was in the thing in the car carrier. But holy shit, man. Like, I understand people are still going to do that. People are going to leave dogs in cars in Phoenix in 120 degrees and not leave the motor running, not leave a crack. They're going to leave children are going to drown in pools, right? Like, these things are still going to happen.
What were you saying about me drinking on this podcast today?
But can't we minimize it?
Who?
Can't we
all just get along?
Can't we just minimize those issues is my point, right? I'm not saying that it's going to eliminate them, because people are people. We make mistakes. We are fallible.
People.
Am I starting you to drink today?
Oh, yeah, dude.
Why?
I've already started drinking in my head, bro.
But it's a good thing.
No, man, it's depressing.
Come on, man. Control and regulation. It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Control and regulation. My favorite.
The one thing that you and I love.
Shit.
The one thing, like, I'm talking about putting a control system in place, and I hate fucking being told what to do.
Asshole.
I'm such a dick.
Hey, Mark, you cannot burn the system down until there's another one in place, okay?
Right. I'm trying to make a system to burn down later.
Oh, okay.
Duh. Anyway. So where are we at after that?
I don't know, man. I'm slitting my wrist. That's where I am.
So then they created a new institution, right? Dedicated to eugenics. Do you want to talk about the E.H. Harriman, how that dude bled her money? How he suckered her into that?
He suckered her.
Just kidding.
Mr. Davenport, the main guy from Long Island. Davenport was the main American figurehead.
He's the American influence.
He's the main American figurehead for all of eugenics. He went to Mrs. Harriman in New York City. Her husband passed away. He was a railroad magnate or magistrate or some shit like that, and left her with a boatload of money.
Magnet.
Back
then. Sure. Magnet or magnet.
The dude had a lot of cash, bro. So he went and talked to her and tried to get money from her because he thought that she could be persuaded that eugenics was a good thing. And he was successful in that, and she became a very good supporter, and she gave a ton of money to the eugenics cause to help promote and publicize eugenics across the country.
Yes. Miss E.H. Harriman. So she had all the money. It's not environment, it's genetics. Eugenics would solve all the problems in society. So she pledged money to him, right? She pledged basically her loyalty or whatever, and a lot of financials. But this is the question, right? That was the next question. Who decides what the correct feature should be?
What the correct what should be?
Features, right?
What does that mean?
Well, when we talk about eugenics, what features do we deem acceptable, desirable, and what features do we deem not desirable? And who makes those decisions? That's the biggest problem with eugenics as a whole, right? Is it whiteness? Is it Asian? Is it African American? Is it person of color? Is it indigenous? What's the right genetic makeup to do, right? Who chooses what are the features we're looking for?
I don't think there's a right answer to that question.
Right. And that's the biggest problem.
Because it's like the same thing I just said about, okay, well, who's on the committee to allow people to get licenses to have kids?
Right.
Who's on the committee to write the test that you have to take to have kids in your little DMV Department of Transportation?
Find me an unbiased test.
That's the problem, is that not only that, but you can't, it's kind of like on the Mars podcast. Who's going to be on your committee that, you know what I mean? Right. Besides Keanu Reeves, who's going to be on the committee that is going to be neutral and peace and love and what's in the best interest of humanity? I don't know. Everyone can be bought. So at a certain point, as I've said before, what are you going to do? Is there a right answer?
I don't know if there is.
I don't think there is.
That's the biggest problem with the whole eugenics, is putting anyone in control of a program like that. They make a decision of what's best.
Well, what they think is best.
Right.
And you can't Obviously, you can't make everybody happy all the time, right? So let's say some dude or lady makes a decision they think is in the best interest of the human race. Well, 26% of the people might go, that's bullcrap. This is horse shit. What, blah, blah, blah. They might freak the fuck out, right? You don't know.
Right.
But they truly believe that they're doing the best thing for the most amount of people. But somebody may think the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, who's to say that, and we'll get into the exact people with the trait book and all this other stuff.
The trait book?
Yeah, I loved inferior germplasm. That was
fucked up, dude.
Yeah, so they go through all this stuff. Now, this is the thing. If you set aspirations that blind you to a certain set of consequences, that's really what this became, is like, we're looking to do this, but the consequences are that, but you're so focused on what you're trying to accomplish,
the end goal, that
you're not looking at the negativity of it. You're not looking at the downside of what it can do to the other side of the coin. And that's where it gets dangerous, because no one can decide, right?
Yeah.
So October 1910, they opened this institute, right? The Eugenics Records Office, or Eugenics Record Office. It housed hereditary information on American families to use it to guide the reproductive choices of the nation. It basically began institutionalizing eugenics. So it started making it like giving it bigger teeth, because it's now there's an institution of eugenics, right? With the office.
And that's where Davenport used the money from the lady, Miss E.M. Railroad chick from New York, to start the institute.
E.H. Harriman.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
The rich railroad chick.
E.F. Hutton.
Sure. So they listened.
And then, so Harry Laughlin was the guy you mentioned earlier. He ran the institute and the trait book, right? Data was used as gospel, but nothing was checked. What I found really interesting was the one guy's like, yeah, they said this, and they just wrote it down. It's like, oh, okay, then that's what it is. There was no double checking, no checks and balances.
Yeah, I found it very interesting that they sent out surveyors to ask people questions all over the country, and they would say, oh, so tell me about your dad. Oh, he was this or that. Oh, but my uncle, he sure was an alcoholic, and he died 10 years ago. So he'd write down uncle was an alcoholic.
Right.
And then they would put that information in I called it a big database, but it was basically a room with paper and file cabinets. So they put that information in the database, but they never verified it. There was no checks and balances at all that the uncle was an alcoholic. So they automatically assumed that was the rest of the family is predisposed to alcoholism because the uncle was. I don't know. That's messed up.
I agree. And that was the point, is they just took that as like, oh, well, then you're bad, your uncle was bad, so that's your lineage. So
your fate's been sealed already,
right?
Because your uncle liked to have a cocktail.
Yeah.
I mean, and what's your definition? Everyone has a different definition of that too. Like, oh, he had one drink a day. Oh, well, somebody might think you are a drunk. Or, oh, he drank once a week. Somebody might think you're a drunk. I mean, that's a wide range of definitions.
I agree 100%. So what this database, to your point, it was the inventory of the blood of the community, right? And here's where that...
Not literally blood.
Right. But, figurative blood.
Yes.
And that's where the inferior germplasm came in.
Inferior germplasm.
That's such great.
But it was the fuck?
Cold.
Dude, that sounds like a metal album. That's going to be awesome.
Bro. How dare you?
What? It does.
You started early. It's not even a song that already exists. You're already making stuff up for it.
Yeah.
I love you, man.
I don't have a metal band or a song, but I have an album title. Screw it.
I love it.
Yeah.
That could be Inferior Germplasm, could be a name of a band.
Yeah.
Because, we make inferior germplasm.
Now opening for war.
Inferior germplasm. Nice.
Sorry. Sidetracked. Sorry.
So, what they did, this was cold, hard, pure science, right? It did not look at anything other than just numbers. Strains of bad behavior / personality. The Eugenics Record Office recommended widespread education and aggressive government intervention. Laws that prohibit the defectives from entering the country, prohibit them from marrying, and prevent them from becoming parents by segregating them in asylums throughout their reproductive years.
But how can you call it cold, hard, pure science when the data is flawed? When it's not, there's no validation of it at all.
The numbers were correct. The context was always wrong, though. It was out of it was the context that was really the right, because what they were looking was the numbers. They basically said this equals that, but that wasn't the case because the context was out.
Right. Wrong. They say 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 was really 7 or some shit like
exactly.
that.
They never got the base information correct.
Okay.
So yes, you are correct.
I don't find okay.
No, trusting this stuff is absolutely detrimental and fucked up. Right. But the truth is, that's what they called it. I'm not, they just said,
okay. I just disagree with that term.
Right.
Cold, hard, pure science.
Well, if you remember, think about, you're a baseball guy, you're a statistics guy, right? That's part of the lore of baseball. Remember, they've got runs and, walks and strikeouts per innings pitched.
Yeah.
Yes.
Walks,
hits per innings pitched, whips, and right. But it's WAR is wins over replacement, right?
Yes,
Stuff
sir.
like that.
Yeah.
These are some really crazy numbers that they started doing. But if you looked at the base numbers, the guy, his batting average was the base number. You're like, oh, he's good because he bats blah, blah, blah. Or he's bad because he bats blah, blah, blah. But every time was a home run or he scored or something.
Yes.
It changes the context of that, right? A power hitter doesn't hit as accurately as one that gets on, singles and doubles.
Yes, of course.
Or, walk a lot.
Of course.
So that's kind of the point, right? It's you can look at a number from one side and it's 100% true in the context or the filter you're looking at it, but it's definitely not true in the broader sense of the world.
I would agree, sir.
Okay. So after that, what else do they recommend after doing the segregating them in asylums and stuff?
Sterilization. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Also recommended was a new procedure called sterilization.
And that's what they came up with, sterilization. I never even knew that. That's kind of the term where it got coined in a weird way. I wonder if it was with animals first or something, but
yeah, that's a good question. I wonder if it was with animals first. I don't know. That's interesting.
But anyway, so they had sterilization. So that Laughlin guy,
who I called the evangelist.
Yes,
he was the religious.
Yeah, tell us what he wanted to do.
Well, he was he was the number 2 guy in America for eugenics, and it became like a religious movement to him. So it was weird, and slowly over time, as the movement began to change, he didn't falter. The guy was just hardcore. I give him credit for that, but I think he's a little nutty.
Right. Well, he's definitely believed in what he believed in.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he wanted to use sterilization as a eugenic tool, basically.
Yes.
So he's like, okay, so let's get these things on the books. Let's get these laws built. But how many? Did you remember the number of Americans that they thought needed to be sterilized to save America?
Yes.
Would you care to share?
15 million.
15 million. This is what, 1913?
This was in 1913. So I did a beer Google, sir. What was the population of the United States in 1913? Check mark. Go.
80 million.
No, sir.
Higher or lower?
Higher.
120 million.
97 million.
Okay. So 100 million.
He wanted to
15%
sterilize. Yes. Basically 15%.
More than 15% because it's less than 100 million.
Correct. Let's just say 16.6%.
Wow.
He wanted to sterilize 16.6% of the population. That's fucked up, dude.
That's 1 in 7.
I know. That's fucked up.
That's
right.
Fucking
if you
crazy.
walk into Circle K and there's 7 people in there, one of them's getting sterilized.
One of them's getting their tubes tied or their nutsack cut.
That's fucked up, man.
That is fucked up.
I couldn't believe that. And I had no idea the population of the U.S. at that time. So I was like, 97 million. Okay, whatever. But I was like, oh, shit, 15%. Damn. That's a lot of
motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Fuck. So, to your point, became religious, right? It was a movement. But then there was this T.H. Morgan guy. he was studying fruit flies in the fly room or something. Fly boys.
Fly boys were studying fruit flies
with him
in the fly room.
In the
university.
Yeah, and they were like using like bottled glasses, milk bottles from the cafeteria they stole or whatever.
Yes.
and the thing was, fruit flies would reproduce every 10 days.
Yes,
so
sir.
They could see very rapidly
the genetics,
right?
Yes, sir.
But this is where they discovered is more complex than just these equal that, right? Even with the 3-to-1 ratio and all that.
Yes. The 3-to-1 ratio did not hold true. It was bullcrap. Because he couldn't figure out. He was trying to figure out, okay, these flies have red eyes, and I can't figure out if the next generation has red eyes or not. These have short wings. I can't figure out if the next generation has short wings or not. And they did this for 6 years.
Yeah. They weren't able to peg it down to exactly what was needed or what they needed to do to get exactly the result they wanted.
So if he says, I can't figure out what this fly is going to do, how the hell are you going to figure out what this human's going to do? So he totally thought eugenics was bullcrap.
Damn Skippy.
Tell you what.
So he was actually on the board or something with the eugenics record office.
He was, and so he asked to be removed.
Yep, he asked
that
to be
is
removed.
correct, sir.
Okay, and then what happened after that, sir?
That was the
But eugenics, I'm sorry, they stormed forward. Eugenics is like, screw this guy, we're still moving forward. They, once again, now they're a cult. I mean, that's
your word, sir.
For all intents and purposes, for lack of a better...
And purposes.
Intense and
intensive purposes.
In teepees also?
All the teepees.
None of the tents. In sleeping bags?
Yes.
In log cabins?
Pitch a tent? What? Whoa.
Bro.
Hey now.
I've had a pitch tent since you sat down, sir.
Shut up.
But eugenics like, fuck this, we're moving forward.
That's exactly what they said.
So February 20th, 1915, 18 million people attended this thing called the Panama Pacific International Expo in San Francisco.
Over 9 months.
Kind of reminds you like a World's Fair-ish
exactly
kind of thing.
Like a World's Fair, yes, sir.
Yeah, tell me more about it, man.
They had a bunch of different exhibits there, but it was basically an exhibit of science and technology to show how amazing America is. And they had railroad stuff and telephones and all these newer technologies. 1915, so right before World War I. I'm sorry, no, middle of World War I. So the eugenics had a room there that everybody got to go see how you could better yourself and you could better society. And so it was the way my version is, it was a sales tactic. I don't, for eugenics.
Right.
I don't, do you agree with that?
To an extent, except for it was a different guy who now enters the picture. It wasn't made by Davenport. They did have stuff, but it was the Race Betterment exhibit that we're talking about.
Yes.
It was actually made by John Harvey Kellogg, wasn't it?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So I
think Kellogg was after that.
Because what I have is here, I have it just as part of my notes. The Race Betterment exhibit with John Harvey Kellogg. He's the inventor of cornflakes.
Right, Kellogg.
Course. And yeah, the Kellogg Grain Company. I don't know what you call it.
The Kellogg Corporation?
Yeah, Kellogg Inc.
Sure.
Believed in cleansing bowels and health, right?
Yeah, the guy, Kellogg was obsessed with it.
Yeah.
He was obsessed with health and fitness and cleanliness. He was all, talking about washing your hands. So he thought that he invented cornflakes to help take care of your intestines and your colon, etc. So he thought that health and fitness ideas was directly tied to eugenics
or to genetics itself, right? Like, so diet can influence the genetics of someone, like how they feel about things or their intelligence. If they lived a clean life, they could be sharper, right?
Right.
So he felt that environment had a lot to do, influenced genetics or your growth or your development as much as the genetics, which is inside, which is these things you can't control, right?
Right.
You can't control what you are.
Your environment.
You can only control the environment.
Yes.
Right. So the attendance exceeded expectations, right?
18 million.
He equated human worth with the qualities they themselves had. That's where the problem came,
was that
right?
Kellogg? I don't think that's...
Well, the whole exhibit as a whole. The whole idea of the eugenics during the fair or during the expo was the people that attended tended to be almost all white, middle and upper middle class, and Protestant. That was like the running theme of all the people that attended the eugenics portion of the expo.
Okay, right.
Right. So they were saying like they equated human worth with the qualities that they had themselves, not others, right? They're like, well, look how good we're doing. Well, we're white and we're this and we're that. So that's what we'll use as a template, right? Because that's what they saw as good.
So you're saying that those people thought everyone should be like them.
That's what, yeah.
And that to me is like, I mean, you are a little tiny baby step away from master race. Yeah. I mean, it's right there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's in America, in San Francisco.
Yeah. In 1915.
Yeah.
That's
well before the Nazi Party.
105 years ago.
That's well before the Nazi Party.
Yeah. That's 18 years before that.
Yeah.
105 years ago. That's not a very long time ago.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty freaking crazy. Yeah. So, but how else would you do it, right? If you came up with an idea, like this is the problem with ideas like this. You come up with an idea and go, I'm smart enough to detect that there's a correlation between this base intelligence and who you're married to and who it is that you're dating or whatever, right? That's your filter. Of course you're going to go from your filter. I mean, I'm
Everybody has that filter. Filter.
Right. I'm not defending it.
No, but that's just reality.
Right. I'm not promoting this. I'm just clearly stating that if you came up with this theory of something, it's through your lens. So you're like, well, of course, I came up with this idea that if we do this, so I must be the people that we must be after because I was smart enough to come up with this idea in the first place.
I see what you're saying.
In a weird way. It's like I created I make the rules. It's my ball. It's my ball, so I make the rules, right?
Are we in the sandbox or what in the hell is going on?
That's what humanity is, though, isn't it? It's just one giant sandbox. So anyway, I'm
taking my fire truck and going home.
I do apologize if the Kellogg thing was not connected to the race betterment thing, but I don't know,
might
man.
be. I just watched it this morning, so it's no big deal.
I took 5 pages.
5 pages, bro.
Yeah. So they were the defining movement for American eugenics. The defining moment for the American eugenics movement was the amount of people that showed up to this expo.
Yeah, that 1915 was huge.
Yeah. Now, it wasn't 18 million that attended the specific eugenics thing. It was 18 million that attended the expo. I think it was like still a huge number of people. I didn't get that exact number.
I don't think they said it.
Okay, so what happened after that? Did you want to talk about the Kallikak family and all that stuff?
Sure. I'm trying to think. Who wrote the book, The Kallikak? There's a book called The Kallikak, Kallikak, The Kallikak Family.
Right.
Do you remember who wrote the book?
I don't remember who wrote the book because it didn't matter who wrote it because it wasn't one of the people that we're really talking about. It's just somebody wrote this book. Right?
Somebody wrote this book called The Kallikak Family, which basically was it's the study of a family and the generations and how it gave examples of how negative traits are passed down generation to generation, or so you were led to believe. And whether it was, again, being a criminal or being alcoholic or whatever that may be, it was painted in such a way that it was negative. And, you got that from your dad. Nothing to do with how you were raised, nothing to do with your environment. You got it from your mom. Sorry, you got it from your uncle. You got it from your grandfather, whatever. And then that was so popular, that book sold so much, it was ingrained into popular culture where it was used in campaign speeches, and it was used in Congress, and it was used in everyday language almost to a fault.
The Germans used it. The Nazi Germans even referenced Kallikak family in one of the propaganda films they were showing.
Holy crap, I don't remember that part.
Because he said Kallikak family von
really?
Kallikak. Yeah.
Oh, shit,
and it was like, you could see it. It was really interesting. So, to your point, huge thing. It was a book about how one family is affected by quote unquote bad breeding. It was only bad breeding. Nothing else would matter. That was what it was. And that started, once again, there's eugenics rearing its ugly head. And then we get into World War I. And that's what I found this. I didn't know any of this.
Well, I didn't even know what eugenics meant, dude.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't even know it was in the American mainstream. Like, you read history books, and I was a good student because I had to be. So I didn't even know. I don't remember studying this in school.
Once again, I just remember master race and Hitler with the purity and all that. And that's the only thing I think about is pure race. That's the only place I go back to. I don't go back to your point, to America pushing it to where Hitler, and we'll talk about it again, but Hitler like references it in his biography.
Yeah, right.
Like, and he uses it, like he says we should do what the Americans are doing.
Can you believe that shit?
Fuck.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
So to come back, World War I, the 3 million men were drafted. Yeah. And
so we spiked. Our military just exploded at that point.
So in 1917, the U.S. joined World War I, which had been going on for 2 years, and 3 million men were drafted. They were all given tests. There was an alpha test, beta test. Alpha test was if you spoke English.
If you literate. If you could
literate.
Write,
I'm sorry. Read and write. Literate. I apologize. Beta test was if you were illiterate or could not read and write English. Is that correct?
That's basically correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so they did pictures and tried to...
Yeah,
it seemed like a dumpster fire of a test. I mean,
it really did.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So there was, if you did not read or write English, they made you draw pictures. And there was a house with a chimney, but the chimney did not go above the roof. So an Italian American, they made you, complete what's missing in this picture. Instead of drawing the rest of the chimney, he drew a crucifix because that's what he thought went there. Like, that's not right or wrong.
Yeah,
I mean,
it looked like a church.
Because it kind of...
I mean, I could see that, or something.
I thought, you just continue the chimney. But this was in 1917, and this dude is new to America, obviously didn't read or write English because he was taking the beta test. So the point of the story is half of the soldiers that took all the soldiers took the test. 1.5 million soldiers were labeled to be morons.
Yeah, considered morons or below intelligence.
That's terrible, man.
Yeah, but the test was just, once again...
The test is the issue, I believe.
It showed the biases that you go in with a test, right? Is, to your point, we're expecting extend the chimney because that's what we have in America.
Yeah.
But you're not looking through the filter of an immigrant from Italy.
Correct. Do you recall on the alpha test, there was one gentleman who rattled off one of the multiple choice questions that was really tough?
Yes.
What was the question? Do you remember the question?
I don't remember the question, but I do recall, like, it was in my mind while the documentary was continuing. I thought it was interesting.
I was like, it was a tough question. I was like, what the hell?
Just weirdly worded or something.
It wasn't like which river goes to which lake in Africa or anything like that from the before, but it was like, what the hell kind of question is this?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So then in 1919, they created a national intelligence test.
Yes.
And by 1920, of those admitted to feeble-minded institutes, the vast majority were classified as morons. So they went, once again, they were using this 3-part or 3-type thing. They have different classes of moron. Obviously, I think it was like class 1, 2, and 3. I think if I remember correctly. And then it was imbecile and then idiot or whatever. So by 1920, the feeble-minded institutes, they had a vast majority were classified as morons. Doesn't mean they were. Just means they had this test.
That's what they were classified as.
That's what they were classified as. And eugenics, this is the thing too. Eugenics preserves the current hierarchies, right? We talk about systems. The systems that are in place that got us here are the ones they're going to use to continue. So what it did was it just supported the strength of what systems currently in place, right? It makes them even stronger in their foothold over change, right? We've noticed that we're having some systemic issues in today's world, or it's coming a lot to fruition in general. And these systems are being addressed now, right? To an extent, as they always should be.
Well, we're trying.
We're trying.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's not easy, but we're definitely trying, right? But this is the thing. Eugenics, once again, preserved the hierarchy, but things were changing. The world was getting away, once again, getting away from monarchies and getting away from control and getting away. You know what I mean? Like we were getting to the point of really working on individual freedoms. I mean, I know it's still the third, right now it's the 20s.
Yeah.
But there's a general shift for humanity to be individual and free. And
women barely had the right to vote.
20 was when it happened.
Black folks didn't have the right to vote for another 40 years.
No, black people could vote, but they were still 3/5 of a. Remember, they voted even prior to Prohibition. Black men could always vote, but women didn't.
I thought they couldn't vote till 1964. No,
that's
the civil rights movement, dude.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the voting thing, is it? I have to look that up. Do you mind if I sound like an idiot for a second?
I love when you do that.
When?
Oh my God, that's just ridiculous,
I swear to God,
man. Oh,
I thought they were just 3/5 of a man. Remember? African Americans got the right to vote. Let's see, the 15th Amendment, which is before suffrage. Let's see, what year is that? Oh, 15th Amendment, isn't that 65? 1865?
That's when they were freed. That's not when they can vote.
Hold on.
Oh, I mean,
bro, 14th Amendment. Now, you're going to have to talk and while I try to read this as quickly as I can.
I don't want to talk. I don't even want to be here. I don't even like you.
Bro.
I
thought you liked me.
I mean, sometimes.
So tell us more about the eugenics in the meantime. What do you feel about the whole hierarchy?
I think it's bullshit.
Protecting the hierarchies.
I obviously it's bullshit, dude. But you're absolutely right that it's another infrastructure that, oh hey, we're in power, so we need more information to stay in power. I see your point. It's poopy, whatever. It's dumb. It's fucking dumb.
But it made sense, right? It's like I discovered eugenics, so I should be the one using my history of my culture to promote it because I discovered it. It's almost, once again, it's my ball, my rules in a weird way.
And back into the sandbox. So after World War I, what happened, checkmark?
Well, I would like to say this. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution, 1868, granted African Americans the rights of citizenship. However, this did not always translate into the ability to vote. Black voters were systematically turned away from state polling places. But I think the right was given in 1868.
Okay. I'm totally wrong. I apologize.
I hope that I am not. Now, it said in 1964, the 24th Amendment prohibited use of poll taxes. And in 65, the Voting Rights Act directed Attorney General to enforce the right to vote for African Americans. So 65, it was directed the Attorney General to enforce the right. So the right was there, but there was no liberties and no one really was pushing
I got
clean.
You.
So we're both correct, sir. Thank you.
That is weird. We're never both correct. That is unusual.
Usually both of us are incorrect.
Usually both of us are fucking wrong. That's right.
So after World War I, a lot more immigrants poured in, right? 75,000 a month to Ellis Island. You mentioned about that. So this is what was so weird. Davenport wrote in a letter, "Can we build a wall high enough so as we can keep out the cheaper races?" Can we build a wall high enough so as we can keep out the cheaper races?
And he doesn't mean cheap. He means, when he uses the word cheaper, that's not.
He's lesser.
Yeah, it's not the way we think of it. Like, oh, I found this tennis racket cheaper at Dick's than I did at blah, blah, Sports Authority or some shit. He's not using it in the word.
He's using it at a quality
He's
sense.
Correct. It's not financial. It's lesser intelligence or lesser worth.
Right.
That just shows how much better he thinks he is than everyone else.
Right.
And I didn't really get that impression of him until he said that. Because I always thought he had the best of intentions. And so I was like, damn, dude, that's fucked up, man.
I think he was really interested at first, and it really took his mind, right? Like, where can we take this? I think his curiosity.
Yeah,
and then he got really into it, and then it did get this it starts becoming this cultish religious thing because now he's all in.
Yeah.
So everything is about, like, you just dig your heels more, right?
Yeah.
It's humanity. The pendulum, we always swing the pendulum too far the other direction. And then when we overcorrect the other way. It's just how we do it. It's part of humanity. It's not a bad thing. It's just how we process, right?
Well, you're right, but I don't think that analogy holds true for this. I think it's more about Davenport was the man. Like, this was his idea. He was the main dude, and he got caught up in his own movement.
Right.
And he couldn't He couldn't.
Well, I'm saying the pendulum swung,
stop it.
Right. Like, the pendulum swung too far to the point where he's actually saying, can we build a wall high enough so we can keep out cheaper races? Initially, it was just about, hey, what about eugenics?
Right.
And then it goes to sterilization. And then it goes, how do we keep out?
Yeah. Right.
You know, it just got twisted, right?
It's kind of like Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader, but totally different.
Yes. So to whom... Okay, whom? He wanted to maintain the quote-unquote traditional American stock. When we talk about stock, it's like animals, right? The American stock would have been all the founding father people and all those people that built the country.
Yeah.
Not all these GD immigrants, right? Well, I'm just saying that's what he's saying. Well, you can't say that because he probably couldn't use the Lord's name in vain back then.
Oh, yeah. You know, the Ten Commandments, bro.
Yeah. So, to whom? Do you remember to whom he wrote this?
A friend. Was it Grant?
It was Madison Grant, sir. So tell us about Madison Grant.
He was an old white guy.
Yeah, this is the guy.
That's you. Check mark.
Bro.
He's an old white guy, and I would say, I described him as a traditionalist. His ancestors signed the Declaration of Independence. Very, very traditional American man, family money. Worked on Wall Street in New York City. They trace his ancestors back to the Pilgrims, Quakers, something like that. Puritans. I was way off.
Okay, we keep
something
saying
to that
it's
effect.
okay. Once you get Pilgrim in the mind, you can't get it out. That's the only P word that we know back then.
Whoa, hey now. So, Mr. Grant wrote a book, The Passing of the Great Race, which the Great Race to him, he called it the Nordic race. So he believed some fucked up stuff. In my opinion, the synopsis,
it just tells you how kind of simple the science was back then. Remember, scientific method is still pretty new at this point. Like, obviously we had our Copernicuses and our Galileo Galileis, and we had our Da Vinci's, and that's the 1600s, right?
So you're saying this, at this point, the world was no longer flat.
Right, but remember, Darwinism takes over, right? This whole eugenics thing. It's science, but it's science from what they currently understand, which it turns, right? There's times when they find out, it turns it on its ear, like when bacteria was discovered or whatever. It's they didn't know about all this stuff yet, right? Or how this worked. They just had an idea, and they're like, well, we represent that idea, so we must be right? And so what was interesting about this is Madison Grant, once again, to your point, founding father, he had fathers or ancestors that signed the Declaration of Independence. He was one of the Puritan founders, came to America. He was a conservationist. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I forgot
and he
about that.
saved the redwoods.
Yeah,
and this is what he said. They made it sound like he felt this way. He realized he was spending all of his efforts towards saving flora and fauna,
right,
while his own race was dying out. So, like, in a weird, like, Dr. Evil kind of twisted, or Mr. Glass kind of way, like in a dark, twisted, internal way, he's like, I'm just preserving a race that currently exists and does really well. Like, in a weird way, didn't he just see himself as like an extinct, a race that's becoming extinct?
Yes.
So was he bad in that thought? Back to you, sir. Give me some thoughts about that. Because I'm coming at it from a weird angle.
No, I would definitely think that from his perspective, I don't think it was just a race thing. It was his way of life was dying out. Like, to your point that you made earlier about you walk out of your building in New York and there's all these people and none of them speak English and they're poor. And a year ago, it wasn't like that. And to put yourself in his shoes, he's like, what the fuck? Right. It's 1920. 150 years ago, my ancestors signed the Declaration of Independence to free this country, and blood's been spilled. And you people have no recognition of that. Is that what he's thinking in his mind?
Right.
How can you blame him for being... The guy worked his ass, he was not a young man. He was probably 70, 75. Right. The guy worked his ass off, right? So...
And coming at it from a conservationist perspective, once again, you and I don't defend atrocious acts against people.
No.
Okay, so the ends do not justify the means.
Of course not.
In 99.999% of any of the cases we talk about.
Right.
But in this case, through his lens of, I saved the redwoods, I saved this turtle on the brink of extinction, I saved this animal, right? Or I saved this plant. And then he's looking around, to your point, and he's like seeing his numbers dwindle in his immediate vision, right?
Yes.
In his periphery, even. He goes outside, and boom, it's not the people that he grew up with, associates with, connects with, whatever. He sees himself as this, not better race, just a race that's going away, right? Because it's perseverance or preservation, right?
Yeah.
Self-preservation.
Yes.
It's not saying he's better. He still wants to, he just wants to exist in a weird way. So it's a weird, twisted kind of way to look at the world, though. It's
a weird way to self-preserve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in this case, though, some people did think they were better than others. And because of the way the data was collected, eugenics provided the data that supported the belief, right? It was easy.
It was not the other way around.
Right. It was just easy to do. They came up with the idea and then made the documentary. It's like, what? It's like, I don't think Al Gore went into Inconvenient Truth asking the question if genuine global warming exists.
I haven't seen it.
I'm assuming he went in thinking in his mind or believing one side of it and then found the data to support in his film the one side. Documentaries don't seem to be like what they used to be, where it's just like really boring and just give us the information. They usually have an agenda now. It sucks, but that's how it is, right? We all have agendas. So the data they collected
stay on target.
Right. Well, that's what I'm just saying. The data they collected supported the belief in eugenics, right? That there some people are better than others.
Yeah. No, they did it reverse. I get it. Yeah, and it's fucking dumb.
Yes. So, $75,000 a month, right?
Yep.
Can we build a wall? American stock, blah, blah, blah. Passing of the Great Race. So, did you have anything to add about the book?
Did you have a note later on about him and Hitler?
I do.
Okay, then I will wait.
No, go ahead.
No, I will hold my point till later.
Okay, and I will earmark it for you to have it. So, he talks about this Nordic race that gets right. He kind of coins it,
that's
but he
his
kind of talks
in
about
his book.
The Nordic race. And remember, you said he had some fucked up ideas about it. What did you take from it?
What did
he believe, or what do you think?
His idea was that the Nordic race was newer than other races of color, and he thought that if his Nordic race, quote unquote, as I use air quotes, if his Nordic race mixed with older races of color, the genes would be predominant and would overpower his Nordic race genes.
Yeah.
What kind of bullshit ass crap is that shit?
Well, that's why I'm saying, remember the science. This is where science was not there yet, right? He goes, they're the most evolved, but not set yet. Like almost like a gel or like a gelatin or like a mold or
what
like
an
a cake,
idiot.
Right? But like concrete. Well, but if you think about the mindset back then, younger older was better, like in a weird way. It made sense. Older, you always respected your elders. You always look to the age and experience were the thing that got you through.
Yeah, I understand.
So through their lens in the 1800s or the early 1900s, whatever, it seemed like that would make sense in that way. I don't know. Obviously, you and I are like, what kind of bullshit is this?
It's amazing because I really kind of admire him for his conservationism and saving the redwoods and for he really seemed to treasure his family ancestry. And I think that's really cool. And then on the other hand, he's a fucking lunatic. It's like, wow, I really like you. Oh, you're a dick. So it's like this weird, what just happened?
It shows you how the bad guy isn't always the bad guy, or you can almost see the goodness in them, but it's not correct, but it's not like they're intentionally being bad.
In his eyes, he's not being bad.
Right. Like I use that Mr. Glass example.
Yeah, right.
Because basically the whole thing is he kills all of these people,
right?
Just looking for someone who's not him. He didn't look at the people as people he killed.
Yeah,
he didn't want to kill people.
Yeah,
that was just the way to find the one that was invincible.
The ends justify the means, but again, you and I don't think that those means are okay. But Mr. Glass did.
That's correct.
I totally get
right,
you.
And that's kind of how this guy is. Like, I get kind of what you're looking at, but do you see what the other problem is? Right. So it was that the most evolved, the Nordic race, but not set. Not set yet, and they'd be overwhelmed by lesser races, right? So he also saw that laws existed that prevented Negroes from marrying whites, but nothing about immigrants.
That's the word they used. So
yes, Negroes.
That's not our word.
Correct.
That's the word they used.
That's correct. I'm sorry. Yes, because I don't like I use that term. Normally, right?
I'm just calling it out.
In the laws that existed, it was about Negroes at the time marrying whites, but nothing about immigrants. So they wanted to limit immigration as well. So tell us about what happened when they limited the immigration, what they did with Congress and stuff.
Congress was, I'm going to backtrack. The Eugenics Institute placed a bunch of panels of information in the rooms where Congress meets. So Congress, the members of Congress and the what the hell is it called? The Committee for Immigration and Reform and Naturalization couldn't help but be persuaded to look at that stuff. And then that committee thought, okay, we do need to do something about immigration. They went before all of Congress and persuaded them, yes, we need to do something about immigration. So they passed a law in 1924, and immigration was cut by 97%.
Crazy.
I've
got May 26, 1924, the guy that Edward Bernays helped, right?
President Coolidge.
Right? It wasn't Coolidge the boring motherfucker that they had to help by they had a party and they said he made a chuckle?
I believe that's correct.
I think he cracked a smile or something.
Yes.
During a party. Yeah, he signed the Restriction Act, right?
Yes.
Reduce immigration 97%. How many years? 40. I have 40 years. Is that right? Is that?
I don't recall. That sounds a little excessive.
Yeah, but I think I took that down. Did not lift until 40 years later. So that would have been 64. That makes sense.
Sure.
Really interesting.
No idea.
My parents were in that 3%. That 3% that still skated by, but World War II was different with Europe.
Yeah, that may have been vastly different.
Political asylum,
right? Oh yeah.
So, I would think coming from East Germany or whatnot,
right?
Or then became West Germany, whatever. The whole
Germany's.
I still gotta get my mom's in here. So, all right. So, what else did it close the doors to? That was the one thing too.
Yeah, that was very disturbing.
This is where it reared its ugly head. So, 1924. Is when this happens.
Was when the law was enacted. That's correct. But the ramifications of that law obviously were great because, just a couple of years later is when in 1933 the Nazi Party came to power and Jews and other people that felt threatened by the Nazi Party were trying to leave, including Anne Frank's family, and they were denied entrance into the United States because of this law. And then they died. That's freaking terrible.
Yeah. The Diary of Anne Frank would not have... But think about that. Imagine not having the Diary of Anne Frank.
I would totally be okay with never having read that.
Hold on. My point is we talk about causality and how interesting the universe works. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, probably in another dimension, my opinion is they didn't have that law. And she came over and there's no fucking diary.
Yeah.
But wasn't the diary like a way for people to really create solidarity? You know what I mean? To get the strength to continue or whatever was through her words. So like the benefit of that literature to the world for her single suffering. I'm not justifying it.
I get it. I understand.
I'm just looking at the big picture.
I understand.
Right? It's a weird way to look at it though, right? Like imagine not having that because she came over and there isn't anything.
Next.
You can continue.
I'm good, bro.
Okay, so they closed the doors, Jews, right, in the 30s. That was the worst. And then this is where the birth control lady comes in. Margaret
which
Sanger.
I did mention her.
All right, so tell us more about her. I spoke
well, again, she was the biggest proponent of birth control for obviously many, many years. Reproductive rights, I guess you could call it, but she didn't do very well. Her thoughts on birth control and reproductive rights were falling on deaf ears. So eventually she figured out that eugenics was a way to reach people because it was popular. And that again goes to my previous point about, hey, where she said, are you financially able to take care of a child? Are you, and then she used a couple other phrases like, are you, I wish I could remember what she said. Do you remember like, are you smart enough to have a kid? She didn't say that, but
yeah, there was a movie that came out called Are You Fit to Marry, for example.
Okay, there you go.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing though. Margaret Sanger, her reasons for birth control really weren't about eugenics. They were about liberating women. I mean,
well, of course, but she just used eugenics when she figured out, like, oh shit, I can use eugenics to get my point across.
Right.
Boom.
And let's just say the culture of the 20s was not women have choice.
Correct.
Was not women,
they barely
get
voted.
back in the kitchen, get
Yes.
pregnant, you're knocked up again.
Correct.
You do your clean the house, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the culture of the time.
Of course.
Let's just address
That's
it for
a
what
statement.
it is.
Yeah.
That's a statement. That's not.
That's a fact. Correct.
Yeah, that is not promoting it in any way.
Yeah.
But that was the culture at the time. So it seemed to me that her original reasoning was for the liberation of women, for that being ready or being able to take care of the child, right? Like, make it when you can versus when you just get knocked up. Right? So it changed it to choice.
Yes, absolutely.
And the culture, women didn't have choice back then. So
right.
That's where this eugenics becomes an issue, because she didn't believe in eugenics, in my opinion. It didn't seem like she didn't want people sterilized. She didn't want people not to have children because she just wanted you to be able to take care of the child, for example.
Correct. Don't have a kid if you can't handle it.
Right. And that was her main thing, was just base simple. But eugenics had moved so far beyond that in their philosophy.
Yeah.
To the point where they're like, let's make sure we control everything. Let's not let anyone in. Let's sterilize 15 million fucking people. Like, so for her, I don't think she realized how, it was smart for her to do it.
Yes.
But the backside of it, the reasoning for them was like really bad. That's not how she viewed people, I don't think.
I would agree. I don't think she had bad intentions at all. I think she had good intentions.
Right.
But
and they got dragged in, right?
The negative connotations, sterilization and blah, 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 blah of eugenics, that got tied to her. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So then after that, they have that movie, Are You Fit to Marry? So she used eugenics to sell the use of birth control. Is basically what she did.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And once again, is my opinion that she was all about the freedom of the person to choose, and that's where the birth control made sense in her mind. So eugenics makes its way into 1920s American culture, and then do you remember that thing, the freaking alliteration, the tongue twister, the thing where they went all around the country? And they had those like competitions.
Yeah, Fitter Families.
Do you remember the whole thing? The whole thing is called?
No. Fitter Families for Future Firesides. What the fuck does that mean, Frank?
Oh, I think like fireside chats. I think
is that what they were trying to tie it to fireside chats because of the President Roosevelt?
That's what I think.
It was really weird, dude. It was that Fitter Families that they had in 4 different states at like state fairs and stuff like that. It was like a family competition. Like, is your family tall enough? Is your family smart enough? Is your family this? I'm like, dude, it was like a family beauty contest. Kind of. That's my term.
Yeah, it was definitely it was a contest of vanity in some way. Smarter, prettier, whatever.
Yeah.
More fit.
And then they all got a little trophy if you won. And then And then you got to be in the town parade. Like,
Yay.
oh, like that's weird, man. And they keep doing it. Keep doing the wave, yay! And then, but people were lined up to do that stuff, just to participate. That's how popular eugenics was. That's what I found crazy.
And the wood that got me was the next one.
Okay.
Prominent African Americans started accepting the idea of eugenics.
Yes.
E.B. Du Bois, one of the founders of the NAACP.
Correct.
The National Association
for the Advancement of Colored
People.
Yes, sir.
He starts buying into this idea.
Yes.
I mean, this is a current organization.
Yeah,
that's run. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying, like, this is how powerful eugenics was at the time.
Right.
Is the man that was heady enough to found that organization was sold on it.
Yeah.
So it was beyond, like, it had to really become beliefy, very faithy, versus just straight.
Well, I wouldn't say faithy.
Makes sense. You know what I mean?
But I would definitely say that it crossed. Obviously it crossed color lines, because this gentleman incorporated it into the black community.
Yeah.
You know, and he had the same exact beliefs as Davenport and as all these other guys. Yeah. And he tried to make his community better in the way that he thought he could.
Right. And that's again, the idea seems really novel and brilliant. Like, it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
But then it's so nuanced, right? Because you had the term better babies, happier families, right? Simple slogan, but it's super nuanced. It's layers. What does better babies mean? You're eliminating certain people from society because you don't deem them good enough.
You're eliminating them from having babies.
Right, which ultimately removes their entire lineage. All their history goes away, right? And a lot of people, some people have children for legacy and for lineage, right? Like, I didn't have that need, but I could see, like, my dad is the only person, right, that's from his family.
Yeah.
So, like, having a boy to carry on the name would be is a novel idea to you know, some people have that, right? My brother has a son, so I'm good.
Yeah. I got you, because I don't have that. I don't, you know, my dad's not gonna, well, he's not with us anymore, but I'm not gonna have a son, so there's no more Pratitas. Oh, sad panda.
No,
it's gonna be okay.
Panda.
I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. Wah, wah, wah.
All right. So, better babies, happier families. Simple slogan, but very nuanced, right?
Yeah.
And then, do you want to talk about Carrie Buck?
Not really. That's just some sad shit, bro.
All right. Well, tell us about her anyway.
So, Miss Carrie Buck was 17 years old in the state of Virginia. She was removed from school in the 5th grade, even though she was doing very well. And she was moved around to clean different houses to give money to her family. She was raped by someone in her neighborhood. I don't know by who.
Yes,
and
she was raped.
Pregnant. She was taken to an asylum because she was deemed morally
deficient.
Thank you. I couldn't remember the term.
I knew your head spinning what you're looking for, but yes.
So
labeled morally deficient. Okay, you're good.
Morally deficient. So even though because she was pregnant out of wedlock, she was labeled morally deficient.
But she got pregnant by being raped.
Semicolon, even though she was raped. That's some fucked up shit. Right. So this was in 1930 something?
And they correlated mental and moral deficiency. So they felt if you were morally deficient, like remember we talked about alcoholism, criminality, whatever.
Right.
If you were morally deficient, you were also mentally deficient. So she went to court to contest being sterilized because she gave birth to this child, right?
Yes.
While she was pregnant, I think.
Well,
and she went to court to avoid being sterilized because they wanted to sterilize her at that moment.
But didn't somebody want to use her as a test case for some new sterilization law or
Harry Laughlin did.
Like the appeal process or something like that. What was that about?
Well, Harry Laughlin, the main actor, number 2 that we talked about.
The number 2 guy that's the evangelistic type dude.
I think he's like the Wozniak. He's the doer. Like,
yes,
like
that's a good analogy.
Davenport's like the visionary, right? Good Davenport's idea. Little Jobsian.
Yes.
And he has the idea, right?
Yeah.
Laughlin made the shit happen. Like, he really carried out. He was the executive branch pretty much at that point, right? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's what he did. So he wanted sterilization laws. So there weren't any laws in place for sterilization. But he's like, we need to do this because if we can sterilize X amount of people, you know, we have a better America. We can save America. So what he wanted to do was have this court case get all the way to the Supreme Court. So Laughlin gets a lawyer to represent this Carrie Buck woman.
Young lady,
Carrie Buck, gets a eugenics favorable attorney so that she keeps losing and they keep appealing. So he doesn't help her in any way. He's just trying to move the court case up through to the Supreme Court so they can set a precedence for sterilization. Right? That's where we're at.
That's some messed up stuff, man.
Isn't that basically what happened?
That is very accurately what happened.
Okay, so it got up to the county, then the state Supreme Court, then the Supreme Court. So SCOTUS, they upheld the sterilization law as constitutional. So now that gave them pretty much like free reign. Now, how the fuck is sterilization constitutional?
Wouldn't that be a infringement on your personal right, like your personal
right to pursue happiness? Yes,
right.
Where's feeble-mindedness or mental deficiency or moral deficiency defined in the Constitution?
But it's also
all about civil, individual, human, inalienable human rights.
But you're also talking about this was 100 years ago. What was the mental
right?
What was it like then?
What was the makeup of SCOTUS? What also, was the culture of the country?
Yeah, but they talked about the head of the Supreme Court was an 86-year-old Oliver Wendell Holmes.
Yes, who's famous.
Right, so he was 86 years old at the time. He looked really good I was like, damn, dude, he looked great. But he was the most widely respected legal mind in the country at the time. What did they say about him and this case specifically? Do you recall?
He just read the ruling and he wrote this whole thing, and I didn't take it down because it was just like overwhelming.
Okay.
But I don't want to spoil everything about this documentary because it's worth
it was
watching.
Very interesting.
I mean, we're talking about it pretty in depth, but it's worth
fucking
watching.
Too late now.
Yeah, just saying we gotta watch. People gotta watch. Anyway, so what were you saying? Yeah, he read the ruling.
Yeah. Okay. I just thought it was if in 1920, 1930, whenever this happened.
This would have been probably late 20s or early 30s.
So you're talking 90 years ago. And obviously the Supreme Court, they showed these dudes, it was 7 old white guys. There was not one guy under the age of 65.
Oh yeah, they were.
So those dudes were all born around the Civil War. I mean, these were old dudes.
And I feel like that the conservative mindset in that case, if older is more conservative, you would guess, and it's a younger country, so it's probably still more conservative than just liberal. In this way, right? Conservative thought. Like, anyway, they'd be like, that's not constitutional to take away someone's rights. Like, I would just feel like that would be that's the right call, isn't it?
Well,
like, what's the defense for, you're talking about taking away their ability to have children. Now, birth isn't a right protected. Children isn't a right protected by the Constitution.
What they have to determine was the state in the right to pass that law.
That's a good point.
So, and there was 26 states at the time of the 48 that had a law like this. Not exactly the same, but like this, right?
Yeah, I think it was 27,
so
26,
if you're, I'm trying to be objective here. So the Supreme Court has to determine, is the law constitutional? Does the law Not is it constitutional? Does it have a conflict with the Constitution?
You're so smart.
I think.
I
know I'm smart, but you're welcome.
No, this is why you're a genius, because you put the light bulb on for me.
And light bulb.
You did the
little chain.
This guy, the chain thing, and then we let it go. It bounces around a little bit.
Alexa, turn the lights on.
Catches, like ties up into a knot. Then sometimes you have to undo.
Isn't that the worst, bro?
That's the worst when that. So the light bulb is, yes, the state had a sterilization law.
Virginia.
It was unconstitutional for the federal government to get involved, probably, because it's not in the Constitution. Law. And anything, basically, it says anything not explicitly written in the Constitution is up for the state to decide.
Yeah.
Sterilization was not in the Constitution in any way.
Right.
Therefore, they couldn't interfere. That's probably the ruling that they made.
You and I definitely see that sterilization is an infringement on someone's human rights.
But it's whether the Constitution has a right to get in the way of them.
Is there a conflict with that law directly with the Constitution?
Right. And
I believe is what they have to. And we could look it up, and you can look up every single Supreme Court case ever and go, oh, this is what they have to be very specific. Like they're the fucking judge, dude. Like that's their job. They have to read it literally, letter of the law, right? Quote unquote.
Yes. Well, the thing is,
yes,
there was a Supreme Court ruling recently about the election, and it was thrown out not because there wasn't evidence or not. They didn't even look at it because one of the states sued, and it wasn't that state's right to sue for that another state.
Yeah, that's not even
state for that.
Like the Supreme Court would never even look at that.
It was not. It wasn't. It wasn't within their rights. And this sounds like this is probably where it went. Thank you for giving that to me, because I was totally locked into whether, like, your individual rights, it's a right that wasn't explicitly written in the Constitution.
I highly doubt that the Constitution ever thought about sterilization.
No, probably not. I mean, it would make. I don't think back then it was called a gunshot wound or gangrene or some shit.
Yes, gangrene. But, 19th commandment.
So Oliver Wendell Holmes read this. And then, so right there were 6,000 sterilizations prior to the ruling. And that was, and then it rose to more than double in the 6 years following.
Across those 26 states.
Yep. Which is just crazy. And then it said, then I have the next note is I have fall 1926. So this may have been 25, 24.
Yeah.
Because they are pretty good chronological on this one.
Yeah,
they started with the last thing and the first thing, but
yeah, I agree.
Anyway, so what'd you get after that? This Mueller guy.
The Mueller dude at the University of Texas at Austin was one of the fly boys. He moved from the previous university, still doing fly shit. He couldn't figure anything out. He was still using the old methods with the milk cartons and all that shit. He finally decided that he would radiate the flies to see what would happen. And he discovered he could create mutations, which was something that had never been done before.
Yeah. So basically he ran him under an x-ray or something.
I assume it was something like that.
I think he said that. And then, what that idea that genes were malleable. So he's like, well, this isn't a fixed thing, right?
It's not that 3-in-1 law.
Heredity is not fixed.
Yeah.
You can make changes, and it kind of reminds me of the Kellogg idea, right? Where your diet can affect your genes as well. It's like a reverse way of thinking, right? Because clean eating, clean life, clean mind.
Yeah.
Right? Well, heredity is not just as simple as the pea plants of Mendel's. It was about some issues with less desirables are social. So they were saying that sometimes these other issues that come in, social issues, environmental, cultural things, can change who you are. So you're saying that
they can.
Right, because it really is nature and nurture.
Yeah.
It's this ultimate fight of nature and nurture. Eugenics is purely nature.
Yes, sir.
Take zero account into your starting place in society, your status, your parent status, your
all the
education,
statuses.
Nothing. So what happened after that then, sir?
The Great
Depression.
Depression.
I give you all the good stuff. So tell us about
you
the
can
Great
take
Depression.
it if you want.
No, please.
You said you gave me all the good stuff. That's not good stuff.
I know that's
bad shit. The Great Depression. It became obvious that regardless of your situation, if you were a doctor or a lawyer, you could have been poor real quick because everyone lost their money. There was 25% unemployment and it was craziness. So you could have been a farmer or you could have been a doctor and you could be in the same soup line as anybody else. So it was obvious that
it wasn't just genes.
It wasn't just genes.
It wasn't just your awesomeness.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. That was huge, right? And then they said it's society, not the individual, which is the real criminal and which stands to be judged. And eugenics was completely ignorant to social and society issues, which is true because it did not care about nurture which is that side, the environment.
Yeah, absolutely true.
So they said eugenics might yet. Oh yes, somebody wrote eugenics might yet perfect the human race, but only in a society consciously organized for the common good.
So is that like Star Trek?
Yeah. But the question is this. Sir, no, keep it on you, bro. Keep it on you. Bastard.
What?
What is the common good?
That is also, didn't I say that earlier? Like if one person is they're trying to do the most good for the most people, 26% of the people are still going to be pissed. So
what's common good, right?
Is
common good utilitarian? Where it benefits most people. We talk about this all the time.
But see, that's what everyone tries to do is like, hey, if I make this decision, this is going to help the most people and or piss off the least amount of people. Is that's what you try to, that's what everyone with the best of intentions is trying to do the most good. Right?
But if we were to look at that, once again, I mean, we do talk about the conscious good as half white, as white myself, make up the majority of the percentage still of the population.
In the U.S.
Right. So if something probably would benefit, say, white people more, because that's a larger percentage, then it negates the 13% African-American community. And then
16% brown.
This is where it becomes very nuanced.
Yes.
Once again.
No, I get it, dude.
We talk about this stuff because
so
it
a law can be
important.
passed, and they go, "Oh, well, the law is passed to favor white people." Well, because the majority of the people are white, so you can judge the wording to make it seem bad,
right? But it can, but also sometimes other groups need different things than other groups. Like the needs of New York City are not the same as the needs of Lincoln, Nebraska.
No shit.
Right? Like
Go Big Red.
Right. No offense to Lincoln, Nebraska.
No, of course not.
Thank you for the 3 people that live there and the 2 that listen to us.
Go Big Red. Go Big Red.
Cornhuskers, baby. No, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, but it could be detrimental to a percentage of society, like you said. Cannot please everyone.
It's impossible.
But and that's the problem that we always run into with social and societal issues, right? So what is consciously the common good?
That's obviously subjective.
And back then, I would guess the percentage of white people was higher in the 20s. It'd have to be, right?
Well,
because we've had influx and then reproduction.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, so it probably was even more detrimental to the minority community percentage-wise, I want to say. I don't know, because no one's minority, in that way to me. Like, everyone's equal, right? That's where we want that equality.
Of course,
everyone. Yeah. At least for the opportunity, for sure.
Yeah.
So it makes it tough. It makes it tough situation what the common good is, kind of thing. Just stuff we try to always think about. I love the thought experiments we have.
Totally, dude. Okay, dude. There's your turn. Okay, the next point.
Yes.
It's a good one. I'm going to give it to you, okay?
Go. July 1933. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum. No. Oh, there you go. Hitler comes to power. He immediately enshrines eugenics in state policy, created a law that mandated sterilization of citizens who had any one of 9 presumably heritable conditions. Presumably.
Inheritable.
Heritable, right. Or just heritable means it can be passed on.
Okay.
Yeah.
In or not.
Yes. Yeah. In, out, on, under,
around,
through, around, to,
over.
I love you, man.
All the conditions. All 9 of the conditions.
So, and some of them were like alcoholism and some other shit.
Yeah. So none of... They were questionable.
I mean,
they didn't list them, and I wish they would have.
Right. I saw 6. I read something on the screen where they had it like on the newsprint.
Was it in German?
No. It said alcoholism and it said feeble mind. I think there were 9 anyway. They're on there, or 6. And I'm like, well, that's not 9. So I didn't take that as the direct ones that they were calling, unless they broke them down into different categories of each one. But regardless, it was 9 presumably heritable conditions, meaning that they could get them from their offspring or give it to their offspring, right?
Yes.
So it was based on a model law written by take it from here.
Mr. Laughlin, the Steve Wozniacki guy. What's his name? Steve what?
No, it's Steve Jobs and
Wozniacki.
That is
Bruce.
Steve,
it's the two Steves.
I think it's the two Steves.
It's Steve Wozniacki.
Wozniacki. Wozniak.
Yes,
Wozniak.
Boom.
He screwed me up, bro.
Sorry, bro.
He's got me screwed up with Brian Bosworth.
Oh,
and then I started
shit.
thinking about Bo Jackson.
What?
And him running over him.
Oh, it's terrible.
Man, Seahawks. Raiders.
So the sterilization law that Mr. Laughlin wrote is the Nazis basically copied it. Not word for word. Obviously, one's in German, but it's not identical, but it's very similar. And Laughlin he felt honored that they did that.
And he had correspondence with German scientists.
Yes, which obviously was disturbing. But at the time, they didn't. They didn't
invade Poland yet.
Right. They didn't know where it was going. Right.
Right.
They they're trying to make a better country. Cool. But they also, they're having some problems. So during was it Hitler's imprisonment in World War I? Is that correct? He read The Passing of the Great Race, which was Mr. Grant's book about the Nordic race.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Grant was the older white dude that his ancestors signed the Declaration of Independence. And what was it? What point did I miss?
He wrote him a fan letter.
He wrote him that was it. So Hitler wrote Madison Grant, an American rich guy, a fan letter. That's crazy.
After reading his book.
Hitler writes Mein Kampf, and basically...
Which is his autobiography.
And he states that, which I believe you already stated, that the Germans should be doing what the Americans are doing in the vein of eugenics.
Germans must emulate what the Americans are doing. Hitler's words. And we were the good guys. Just saying.
It's kind of, would you say that's Alanis Morissettean?
I do need a knife right now.
Spork, bro.
That's just crazy.
The Nazis sterilized 400,000 of their own people. It's
actually worse than that.
Of course it is, but that's what they said on the show.
No fewer than.
Well,
think about what no fewer than means. It could be 1 million.
Of course, but
I'm just saying.
I know, dude.
That no fewer than could be a big number.
Yeah.
And that's just, 400 isn't enough. 400,000 isn't enough. 25 times the number that we had at that time.
Yeah, right.
So Germans do everything better. Sorry.
Well, better or
we're just more efficient.
I would say more extreme.
Yeah. No
they don't fuck around.
We do not. Deutschmark does not fuck around with these things. We take our eugenics very seriously. We are very serious about our eugenics programs and how many we shall sterilize. No fewer than 400,000. It's a lot of motherfucking people.
I know. It's ridiculous.
And No, I can't say stuff like that because I sound like a dick.
Next.
Yeah, go.
You're up.
No, I just talked.
You did?
Yeah.
Damn it.
So Nazi law.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
It applied to everyone, whether you were institutionalized or whether you were in jail or you were in an asylum or you were a dude working out at the corner store selling oranges. That didn't matter.
That's how you get 400,000 plus.
Right. It's like, damn, that's messed up. And then I could see how it led right into the hatred of Jews, and it's just that bulldozer effect is almost, how do you, it's kind of like what we said before. Once it starts, you can't stop it. It becomes its own animal in a way. And maybe I'm not being articulate enough in what I'm trying to say.
You're doing very well.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sir.
What are you looking up, bro?
I was actually looking up.
Yes.
The German population in 1936. 36.
Sure. Whatever.
Something like that.
Yeah. 34.
But I can't find the exact population. But I'm just wondering what 400,000 is. Like, obviously, their population is less than ours was. Remember, they wanted to do 15 million Americans.
Yeah.
And it was 97 million Americans.
15%. 16%.
Right. So they had less than 97 million Germans at the time. Because I think there's only like 80 million now. So I'd have to look at what that population was. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you.
In 39, it was 86 million, but that's wrong because that was all included territories they took over.
Poland and
France,
Belgium.
Poland, everything.
Yeah, right.
All parts of Africa and all that at that time.
Dude.
Like, so obviously that's not the correct number. But it looks like 1934. 66 million? 409,000. So 66 million at the time. Maybe that was correct. But I mean, I'm just saying 400,000 people sterilized. Yikes. And like, it didn't matter, like to your point, whether you're institutionalized or not, or whether you didn't, I don't know what kind of tests they had. Like how like it was just those 9 traits.
Right. And is that was it like, oh, hey, John down at the corner store? Yeah, he's trait number 8. Get John now. Like, was it that simple? They just believe somebody? Oh, yeah, he's feeble-minded because he forgets shit. What? Like, is that what happened?
And then they used meth to do Blitzkrieg. Like, hello?
Can we survive the Blitzkrieg?
So this supposedly rooted out alcoholism. So were a number of their soldiers sterilized? They probably must have been. Well,
they didn't care if the soldiers were sterilized. They just needed bodies.
No. What I'm saying is like,
yes, I think they would have been sterilized.
They would have probably had vasectomies or something at that point.
Yes, they had no tubes, bro.
Like a lot of them, just because like they were fucking drug addicts at that point because they were using that Pervocel shit to
Pervocel.
It was some over the counter fucking meth that they were taking.
Yes,
it's crazy. And they've talked about Hitler and
does Pervocel
some addictions he
cause
may have had.
Anal leakage and dry earlobes.
Ashy skin.
That's the worst.
It's the worst. Yeah. So in Mein Kampf, he writes Mein Kampf. So they sterilized 400,000 plus, and then it drew attention in America because 27 of 48 states had laws about sterilizing the feeble-minded. So 27 of 48 states had laws that the Germans were executing to perfection or to really damn near perfection, which in this case, perfection is bad.
Well, yeah, and that just shows the United States is no better. In the United States, in the Western Hemisphere, and in Western Europe, Germany's painted as an evil empire, right? But the United States, half the goddamn country, has the same law. We're no better than they are. That's fucked up.
Yeah, and not only that is a law that was here was a blueprint for theirs.
Yeah, and it was
beyond just us doing it ourselves. Like they modeled theirs after us. That's how much they respect how good we did it.
How good the law was.
That's how good we did bad things.
They just took the law and they executed it better, to your point.
Right. They just perfected it. I guess. They made a better wheel or something. So the 1930s was the peak of eugenic sterilization. Money played a huge part in the 30s. And then this movie, Tomorrow's Children. in 1934. Wasn't something about her parents being like alcoholics or whatever, and it turns out she was adopted the whole time, so she wasn't even part of. She wasn't even part of the family in the first place, like genetically.
Yeah, I didn't remember that part.
Anyway,
how did I miss that?
I don't know, but that's weird. So that was the other part. And then they had the Americans were enthralled by the case of Ann Cooper Hewitt, right?
Which is how the whole thing started.
And that's how the whole thing started. Let's refresh us on that, sir. Bring us up to speed. What's up?
Ann Cooper Hewitt was the socialite, young 30-something girl that her mother sterilized without her authorization. And then she sued her mom and the two doctors. And the case in Frisco against the doctors was thrown out of court since there was a law on the books in California that sterilization was legal.
And then by the end of the 30s, more than 30,000 Americans were sterilized nationwide. And then this is where it really turned, right? Because Nazi Germany took eugenics from sterilization to extermination. And then they showed all the Jews in the concentration camps and the stuff that just...
The bad stuff.
It's really tough to watch every time. It's like all those images are just unbelievable how that we're capable of that. But we are.
The human race.
But we are.
Oh, yeah.
And it's crazy to even think that because it just... Anyway, it was a huge black eye for eugenics, right? It was an embarrassment because basically they're like, not only do we... are we sterilizing the lessers from breeding? We're going to get rid of the ones that are lessers.
Well, in their opinion, was
right,
the lessers.
Right. But I'm saying that's getting rid of anyone is really scary at that point when you start eliminating people.
Yeah.
Because you're like, where do you stop? Who's next, right? It reminds me of the French Revolution where everyone's being convicted and of whatever treason.
Making shit up.
Right, where the Bastille, whatever, the guillotine, everyone got the guillotine. Everyone was fucking getting killed. Like the guy who rescued the people and just became their leader then gets whatever for monarchism or whatever.
Off with his head.
Right. Crazy shit. So.
Local.
Anyway, then it was a black eye, right? So.
Yeah.
And then Holocaust was eugenics to the highest extreme. And then by the end of the 70s, American sterilization exceeded 60,000.
I think the point of that is that in the 1970s, there were still sterilization laws on the books in the United States of America. Disco, bell-bottoms, big cars.
And sterilization.
Jimmy Carter and sterilization.
Yeah, gas lines.
Gas lines, inflation, bro, and sterilization. Are you serious? So Crazy. These laws passed in the 20s, stayed on the books for 50 years, and in the 1970s, people thought it was still okay. I was alive, and people thought it was still okay. I find that just not. I find it shocking, utterly, completely shocking,
especially in America.
Especially.
I mean, and I don't know how well intended these ideas were. I feel like in the beginning the intentions were really good. But
yeah, the original idea.
When you and I do the look ahead thing, when you look down the road, doesn't it inevitably come to this conclusion where that means you're getting rid of some people? Like, because you're either breeding them out or you're fucking eliminating them.
Yeah.
Like, that's clearly seen right away, in my opinion. Right?
Yeah.
So, eugenics, this was sterilization. So, they bred, right? And yes, the chances are higher to pass on good genes or pass on dominant genes, correct? And lower with lesser genes. So, if you have a pair of dominant genes, they carry on. Lesser gene, generally, the what's that called? Not the submissive gene, the
dominant and passive. No,
shit.
The other
regressive gene.
Sure,
no?
Not dominant. Regressive.
I think it's regressive.
Regressive. Gene. You're correct.
Yeah, the regressive gene then doesn't, right? But to the fruit fly point, it's not exact.
Right.
But now we are in this world of technology where we talk about Gattaca. We could talk about a cool movie, bro. Tell us about Gattaca. What's Gattaca about?
It's got Ethan, what's his name in it? And I remember there's a spaceship and
Uma Thurman.
That's all I remember. I don't remember it.
Jude Law.
and they were trying to have a baby, but the baby is not genetically this or that, and they had to like do fake blood tests and shit. I don't remember it. That's all. I don't remember shit, dude.
Okay, so
I need to see it again.
Yes. Basically, it's the future. You can make your children better through gene splicing and all this weird shit.
But didn't he not qualify for it or something?
Right. He was going to be in the military, or he wanted to be an astronaut, but he had a heart murmur. So he wasn't 100% healthy, and they found that early on in his life, so he's never allowed. Oh. Meanwhile, his brother was like the fastest, and whatever, so he was genetically superior. But this heart murmur made him insufficient. But Jude Law was a guy who was genetically superior, and he was like an athlete, like a gold medal gymnast or some sport. But he got in a car accident or something, and he couldn't walk anymore. So he acted like the other guy. So he was an imposter. So Ethan Hawke posed as Jude Law. So he used all his identification with his face and stuff. So he could become an astronaut and go out in outer space.
Okay.
And then there's a whole twist and turn, blah, blah, blah. So like he has to be very careful because they check for genetic material all the time.
Genetic material, bro.
And I think they catch an eyelash or something. Oh my God.
Dun, dun, dun. Dun,
dun. Sip of a water.
Now that you gave me a summary of the movie, I'm not going to watch it.
You should watch it. It's totally worth watching.
No.
Okay.
That's all my notes, sir.
Yeah, that's all we're talking about. So, but this is where eugenics now, we extend it. It's no longer about sterilization to the point of this CRISPR stuff, right? We can actually modify genetic makeup and put it into a child.
That's disturbing. No. That's just no.
We talked about it, right? The Chinese twins. They took out a gene that's linked to getting HIV. So they genetically took that out of their genetic sequence, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And the side effect was increased memory and intelligence or something. That was a side effect. Right. That was a side effect. But the intention was to not get HIV because it can't attach to that genome or whatever genetic sequence. But the side effect was increased intelligence and memory. And the guy did it, and he made babies out of it. Like, that's like then it really becomes financial, right? If I can afford this enhancement, if I can afford to get my blood filtered or my egg,
harvested.
Yeah. And get this added and this removed and whatnot. It then even becomes more of a separation of class, right? Class and social structure. Because people, the haves can do it. So they'll do it and they'll get even better, right?
Yeah, I see your point.
And the have-nots are stagnant. So
I see how you would say it's just genetics in a different way. I get it.
Right. Because it is about perfecting humanity or making better people, right?
Yeah.
So, not being able to get HIV is a healthier baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the side effect of memory and intelligence is great. It's actually a really positive side effect. However, what if no one else does that to their society?
Right.
And then these people have 10% better cognitive ability. 10% is a huge chunk.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
Like just able to multitask or some weird added thing that they have, right? Memory's a good one because memory is very important for a lot of things. And then, they're better. So like, well, hey, let's do more of that because that was good. But what are the really ramifications in that, right? Once again, it's going to separate groups even more.
In an extreme way and quickly.
Exponentially.
Yeah, because it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen faster.
Yeah.
Like eugenics took 30 years.
This is through generation. They can do this in one egg. They can make all the added and
this
removed.
will happen like in a year.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the baby.
The birth. Right.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
9 months.
So a year where eugenics previously took 30 years.
Right.
So
or multiple generations.
Yes,
60,
correct.
80, 100 years.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean? Like,
Right. But you're trying to keep breeding the way you want to breed.
Yeah,
right?
that's some scary shit, dude.
That's really fucking weird. It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was great.
What does everybody think?
Yeah. Tell us.
Watch the documentary on PBS.
Very good. We'll put the
American
link.
Experience. Eugenics Crusade.
Season
I
30.
had no idea about it. It was super interesting.
Episode 11. It's worth a watch.
And we all try to be better, right? But at what point is the cost too much?
And then beer Google famous people and eugenics and see what names pop up next to them.
That's a good beer Google search.
That's really scary.
Okay, great.
I'm not going to say what.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that person.
Yeah. Dox people.
Right, I forgot. Yeah.
So just do that. Be like famous people who believe in eugenics nowadays.
Eugenics supporters.
Yes.
Not athletic supporters,
but not actually publicly announced, but behind the scenes,
right?
Are correlated to, linked to. Just be interesting. Fun little watch.
Yeah.
So that has been Eugenics in me.
And you.
I am Eugenics Liver.
All of us.
Thank you so much for
Tyler
listening.
Durgan.
Yes. Tyler. I am Jack Spleen.
Right.
But any closing arguments, sir, or closing statements possibly?
The only one I have left is be excellent to each other. Party on, dude.